Hey people, Shinobi no Kami here. In this fanfic, most people believed the Yondaime to be Naruto's father, but they were wrong. His actual father had to watch as Kyuubi was sealed into his newborn son and sent into a world of hatred. And now, he wants vengeance. Check the description and give a sub to my thumbnail maker God Kage Theories. Hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and if you want to make suggestions or something else, tell me in the comment section. Now let's roll the intro. Chapter 31, Why I Want Revenge. Bright light of the morning sun shone through the window down on the sleeping black-haired boy. He stirred for a moment and then slowly opened his eyes and caught a glimpse of the red rays of the morning sun. Wait a minute, the morning sun's rays aren't red. Naruto strained and opened his eyes and saw to his surprise a sleeping redhead resting against him. He blushed and held himself from saying something out loud as Tayuya was sleeping against his shirtless upper body. This was extremely awkward for him, a girl sleeping on top of him, although it also felt rather comfortable. He thought back to what happened. He had shoved Anko out of the way as Yuho, who had somehow transformed into a scorpion, had tried to poison her. He hadn't been able to move in time, and so he took the blow that was intended for her being injected with poison. He remembered the searing pain that rushed throughout his entire body, and the rest was just a blur as he had collapsed in pain. His right side was covered with bandages apparently applied by the sleeping girl. He frowned and locked that away, remembering to keep an eye for that tactic in his fight at the exams. Looking back down at Tayuya, he noticed that he had a hand on her back, which he promptly removed. Had she really slept with him all throughout the time he was unconscious? The girl let out a small yawn and changed her direction, turning on the side of her head, allowing him to get a look at her face. It was calm and peaceful, like a rare expression on her face. He also noticed the back of her shirt, giving him a glimpse of her back. Tempting, isn't it, Kit? Teased the fox demon inside him, causing to frown. Kyuubi for some odd reason liked to tease him whenever the two were together, and it annoyed him. He reached up and gently wiped away some red locks of hair out of her face as the girl nuzzled herself against him. Suddenly the girl opened her eyes, and when her brown eyes met with his blue eyes, she let out a loud gasp of surprise. "Mornin' Tayuya," he said to her, a smile on his face. Tayuya's face had become the same color as her hair and looked like it would turn even redder at the awkward position the two were in. Silence filled the room as the two stared at one another. Tayuya looked at him. He didn't appear upset or freaked out that she had stayed with him and had slept with him. In fact, he actually looked happy that she was here. "Naruto," she said to him. He looked at her and saw her face harden. "This never leaves the room. I have a reputation to uphold. If you tell anyone about this, I'll make you regret it," she said, warning him. Naruto smirked and nodded lightly, knowing the threat was empty. Tayuya got out of the bed quickly and got ready to exit the room. "Hey Tayuya-chan," he called out to her. She turned her head and looked back at him. "Thanks, for staying with me while I was poisoned," he said, smiling to her. A rare smile appeared on her face and she nodded at him as she left the room. At ZODIVK, Lord Orochimaru, "We weren't expecting you," said second leader of the Sound Four, kneeling in front of his master. Him, Kidomaru, and Jirobo kneeled in front of their lord. "Arise, all three of you," ordered the snake Sanin to them. The three did so. "Orochimaru-sama, we didn't think you'd be back until the exams were over," said Kidomaru the spider ninja. Orochimaru nodded. "There has been changes made. Gather the councilmen and my best men in my office. I want all of them there," he ordered to them, who quickly left. Watching the three go, he heard footsteps and turned his head. "Orochimaru-sama, what is happening?" asked Kimimaro Kage to him. The lone survivor of the Kage clan then started coughing but immediately regained his composure. Orochimaru watched on. Kimimaro had a disease, a genetic disease passed down from his clan that had surfaced a year ago that had the possibility of being fatal. Not wanting to lose a valuable ninja, Orochimaru had gotten the best doctors and medic nins in the land together, including Kabuto, who appeared one day to report, and they had managed to stabilize the disease and heal him. He often had to take medicine that Orochimaru himself had developed, as although he wasn't a medic nin, he knew very well how the body reacted to sickness. The disease over the past year, thanks to the aid of the doctors and medic nins, had gotten weaker, but he still needed to take the medicine until it was out of his system for good. If I had given him a cursed seal like I had originally planned, I doubt he would be alive now, let alone standing, since it would affect him, he thought to himself. He had planned on giving Kimimaro a cursed seal but stopped himself from doing so. Only a few had it, a sign of how he had changed. Sakin, Kidomaru, and Jirobo had the seals whilst Tayuya and Kimimaro didn't. Our alliance with Sand is paying off, that is what is happening, Kimimaro, now come, I want you there as well. He ordered the Kage boy, who nodded. Later that day, Orochimaru sat at his desk rubbing his head, fighting off an annoying migraine. After seemingly endless hours of talking, it was finally done. Hearing a knock on his door, he let out a mental groan and mentioned for the person to step in. Arashi Fuma stepped in and walked forward and bowed in front of him in respect. "What do you want, Arashi?" he asked to him, knowing that Arashi wouldn't enter his chambers for no reason. "Sir, there is something I want to talk to you about," said the head of the Fuma clan quietly. "And that would be, this plan of attacking Konoha. I do not approve of it." "I don't understand, sir, why are we doing this? We have no quarrel with the Leaf," said Arashi to him, causing Orochimaru to frown. "We are doing this for what they have done, the wrongs they did to me and my son." Arashi looked at him, not understanding. "Orochimaru-sama, these past 5 years you have been a great leader for Otogakure. We never would have survived if you hadn't killed Koi, but ever since you were reunited with your son Naruto, I noticed as the months went by a change came over you. I do not understand, what is it that the Leaf has done?" Orochimaru looked at him. "Arashi, a long time ago I was a different person, cold-hearted, malicious, uncaring, with no emotions or redeeming qualities. If I told you even a quarter of the things I have done, you would look at me like a monster. In my pursuit of immortality and finding out the truths of the world, had done things that no man or God would ever forgive me for. I have the blood of hundreds of people, ninja and civilians, stained on my hands, including children," he said to Arashi, remembering all the things he had done. "I even used my own students in my experiments. I was hated and feared as a horrible creature that would kill someone just for the fun of it. But then something happened I never thought it would. 12 years ago I saw the birth of my own son, along with Kushina, who never gave up on me when everyone else did. I instantly saw in Naruto myself, the boy I was before I changed. Kushina was the only person who actually made me feel something. She changed me, and as a snake sheds its skin, so did I, determined to start a new life with her and Naruto," he said to Arashi, telling him stuff he had never told him or any of Sound that he had hid from all of them. "But as you know, things happened that were beyond my control. Kyuubi somehow appeared on the day of Naruto's birth. I do not know why that demon appeared, and then everything went wrong. I battled the accursed fox with everything I had, but even Ia Sanin could only watch and do nothing. Then I saw Minato appear, and he held in his arms Naruto. He took him away from Kushina, who I know died from a broken heart for what he did, as he hated me and couldn't stand the fact that she loved me. I, held back by my former teammates, was forced to watch as he used Naruto as a vessel to seal Kyuubi in. With every passing year I saw Naruto grow, and how he was treated, how he was hated by those pure-blooded fools who believed themselves superior to everyone. I could not stand the fact that my son was used as a scapegoat. I may be a lot of things, Arashi, but unfeeling I am not." Arashi stared at him, staying silent. After a couple minutes had passed, he spoke up. "I had always heard and thought of as Konoha as a paradise, where there was no hatred or discrimination for others. It appears that I was wrong. And you also say you have done things but had changed yourself for your son. You are a most interesting person, Orochimaru-sama, but my father always told me that even the most black-hearted of men can change. Although I will not partake in this fight with the Leaf, I wish you success. You will not take part in the battle." "No, I won't, my lord. I shall stay here and rule in your stead whilst you are gone," he said as he turned around and began to leave the office. He stopped and gave him one last look before he left. At Konoha, Gaara was sitting on a rooftop in a meditative state. Taught to him by his late uncle, he had found it to be one of the few things in his wretched life he enjoyed. He sat cross-legged, his gourd strapped to his back as he focused on the few good memories that he had. He saw Yoshimaru patting him on the head, letting him know that everything was going to be alright. He remembered how his uncle was seemingly always there for him during his early youth, no matter what everyone else thought of him. Then came the night where he was attacked by a strange man and he in his anger had attacked him. He then found out the man was none other than his own uncle, who revealed that everything he said the entire time was nothing but a lie, as he hated him for what had happened to his mother. The man opened his vest and lit some explosive tags and Gaara's eyes opened immediately and he scowled and clenched his hand into a fist. "Gaara!" A voice called out and he turned and saw his sensei. "Your father is here, he wishes to see you immediately," said Baki to him. Gaara frowned but slowly got up and headed into the building he and his siblings were staying at. He soon came to a room and he saw his father, the Kage, who glared at his son, and he had that accursed bell dangling around his neck. Temari and Kankuro were in the room as well and both immediately noticed the tension between them. "So, you have advanced, have you, boy?" asked the ruler of Sand to him. "That I have," replied Gaara with no emotion. "I heard you had trouble against a mere taijutsu user. Have you gotten weaker as you gotten older?" taunted his father to him. A small frown played across Gaara's face, which his siblings noticed. "He wasn't worth my time, I just let him think he could win," said Gaara, keeping his calm although he could hear Shukaku's mocking laughter. To tell the truth, Rock Lee did actually give him quite a bit of a fight. "I certainly hope so, boy. If your performance is as weak as it was back there, our plan will fail miserably," sneered the Kage to him. Baki, who was in the back of the room, knew of what he was referring to. Sand and Sound had made an alliance a few months back when the Otokage appeared. The Kage had agreed to it and they had made plans to attack Konoha during the exams. Gaara was an essential part of the attack. He was to use Shukaku's power to crush all who dared oppose him. "Remember, boy," ordered the Kage to his son. "You better not try anything that dares ruin our plans," he said as he reached towards the silver bell and gave it a slight ring. Gaara winced and reached up a hand towards his head, feeling pain from the enchanted ringing which harmed the demons and their vessels. The Kage had a wicked grin on his face as he watched the boy, unaware of the disgusted looks Temari and Kankuro gave him as he seemed to take pleasure in ringing the bell. Gaara looked up at him, hatred clearly seen in his green eyes, and gave a small growl. "I understand. Fath. Kage." Elsewhere, Keiji Sosano was at work in his room drawing symbols on the floor with some chalk. They were arcane symbols of Jashin that he had made for an unholy ceremony. He had to get this perfectly or else be punished. Foolish followers had been known to be sacrificed to Jashin for making mistakes when they attempted a ceremony. He stopped and overlooked it. Everything was matched perfectly. He lit a dark candle and the small flame appeared to make the darkness of the room darker instead of lighting it. He then sat on the floor and prepared himself. "If I am to capture the fox vessel, I must know of a way to do so. Jashin shall give me the answers," he said to himself. He then began chanting in an ominous tone. After a couple moments had passed, some of the symbols began to glow a light purple, illuminating the room. Fires started to form around the symbols nearing him, but he paid no attention to the licking flames. A beam of dark energy shot up in the room, shaped like a cylinder, covering him in it. This was good, as it meant he had drawn the symbols perfectly. A loud roar came, shaking the room, and a demonic hand shot out of the circle. Another hand appeared as well, and slowly a large humanoid creature with bat-like wings had pulled itself out. The creature, its black coal-like eyes, looked around the room and saw Kage. It took a step forward but stopped, seeing the cylinder which protected Kage from him. The hideous creature was over 10 feet tall and had to fold its wings to keep them from reaching the roof. "It appears Jashin watches over you, boy," sneered the bat-like demon, a lesser demon from the netherworld, but looking at its sharp claws and talons, it was able to rip a human in two with ease. "So, Jashin sends you Belzebul to do his bidding," said Kage. He knew of the wretched fiend in front of him. Once a human and one of the first followers of Jashin, he had been turned into the hideous creature before him as a reward. But instead the wretched being seemed to enjoy his new form, as he was very powerful. "Why have you summoned me, boy? Send me back to my master's side," ordered the fiend to him. "Patience, Belzebul, I have a question to ask you, then I shall send you back to Lord Jashin." Belzebul snarled and batted his wings, more to show off than he was angry. "Fine. Ask me your question and be quick," I am in pursuit of the vessel of the nine-tailed fox Kyuubi. He is here but I am unable to get him. My incompetent companions are of no use to me and two have died for their foolishness. Also there is plans of an attack less than a month from now here in Konoha. Tell me how shall I capture the Kyuubi? Belzebul brought a clawed finger up tapping it against his jaw filled with sharp teeth. You say two of your companions have been slain. Well then foolish boy that is all you need. Kage looked at him confused not understanding. What do you mean? Impudent fool, that is all that I shall give you. The souls of the dead are more than enough to destroy the living. It is more than enough info for you a servant of our Lord shall need. Belzebul then disappeared cackling as he vanished sent back to the netherworld. Kage let out a loud roar in anger at the demon's treachery. He was prepared to recast the jutsu and summon a more intelligent one when he then looked at his book and noticed something. He picked up the book and saw something that caught his eye. He turned his head towards a stand and on it were Tsushigumo's mask and Shinjiro's tattered cloak. He looked back at the book and slowly a dark smile spread across his face. He knew just what to do. A white-haired man stood outside Konoha thinking to himself. He was thinking of what he saw less than 24 hours ago. That kid, that boy who was apparently of that new village sound seemed very familiar. He looked almost like his one-time rival and greatest comrade did. That kid, there's something special about that boy I can feel it. Muttered Jiraiya to himself thinking. The boy looked so similar to his one-time best friend it was scary as if he was him back in his youth. He does look like him but he seems different as well. His eyes were cold and with no emotion, whilst that brat's eyes had happiness in them. His eyes aside from his pale skin was his most noticeable feature, they were round but appeared to be slanted almost like a snake. It was intriguing, eyes shaped like that weren't common. His thoughts to himself Jiraiya then forced himself to think of what happened 12 long years ago. He found himself along with his blonde-haired teammate Tsunade holding back someone who was struggling against their iron grip. It wasn't something he wanted to do but there was little choice for Konoha's survival depended on it. They hold him tightly and all three of them could only watch on as the Yondaime standing on top of the toad boss sealed Kyuubi away. He remembered his once best friend vowing that all of them would pay for what they had done and then left Konoha forever. He remembered being in the Hokage's temple with Sarutobi holding a crying newborn who was all alone with no mother or father, the heartbreaking wails of the child of his rival which they could only listen to unable to do anything. Shortly afterwards he left Konoha cause of far too many memories there. Could that kid that I saw? Could he possibly be the who I think he is? Mused Jiraiya thinking hard. Orochimaru's son. That night Naruto was hanging out with Tayuya and Haku in the village. Naruto now healed from the poison was with them eating restaurant as the three discussed current events. So you got poisoned by one of those rain nins? Asked Haku to him as he took a sip of water. Yeah it was a cheap shot though. It wouldn't have been if you hadn't been stupid and tried to be a hero dumbass. Snapped Tayuya to him. Naruto frowned at her words but let it go. Well I plan on getting back at him when we fight at the exams. What about you guys? Have you come up with any strategies for your fights? Haku smirked. I believe I have come up with a plan to defeat the Hyuga boy. It seems he thinks we are all guided by fate, but I think that will lead to his downfall. Tayuya scoffed not impressed. Well I plan on giving that blonde bitch the thrashing of a lifetime if she gets in my way. At least I'm using my head instead of my fists or in your case your flute. Said Haku dryly. You wanna try your head against my fists right now femboy? Said Tayuya to him. Enough both of you, save it for when we train tomorrow, Otusan should be back soon as well. Said Naruto being the voice of reason whenever things like this happened. HMPH fine whatever. Muttered Tayuya crossing her arms and frowning. The three ate their meal with little else spoken between them after paying for the meal the three walked around the village. Haku looking around stopped and saw something which made him smirk he then called out to the others. Hey guys, I'm gonna head back, I'll see you when you get there. He said as he then left them. The two watched as he left and then shrugged and continued stopping at a bridge and peering into the water. Hey check it out, said Naruto pointing up. The two looked and saw the full moon in all its glory shining in the night sky. Yeah, replied the redhead looking up with him. The two continued staring up at the moon and Tayuya looked over at Naruto who seemed oblivious to her as he watched the moon. Deciding to try something which she never thought she would do she slowly wrapped her fingers around his hand. Naruto didn't respond and Tayuya dejectedly removed her hand from his when her hand was suddenly grabbed by his clutching it. She turned her head and saw Naruto still looking at the moon with a smile on his face. She looked down and saw their fingers intertwined with each other's. Slowly a smile grew on her face as she looked up and joined him in watching the moon. Elsewhere, in a small valley near Konoha, bodies laid sprawled across the ground, some still clutching weapons even in death. They were bandits and apparently they had been attacked by someone. Agish, cried out the final member as he was sliced across the abdomen and then across the throat as he fell to the ground to join his comrades in death. Pitiful, grumbled his killer, who had black hair and wore red. His face was no longer covered with the paint that he once adorned and he now had his hair which he had bundled up when he veiled his face tied up in a long ponytail. He looked around in disgust at the slain bandits that he had killed this night. They were garbage but he needed some exercise and not to mention to feed his new weapon. He sheathed his nodashi and he looked up to the moon unaware of the boy who was his rival looking up at it as well. A smile appeared on his face as he looked at the enchanted blade in its sheath. I am waiting, Naruto. I am waiting for the day that is soon to come. The day when I stab this blade through your heart. Said Muta Daidoji, a cruel smile on his face, eagerly waiting. Chapter 32, Eve of the Chunin Exams. A black-haired boy sat down on the floor reading a book over sword techniques. They were advanced techniques that only an expert could do, such as channeling chakra through your weapon and even using elemental attacks with your sword. They were difficult to study and he doubted he could master them now. He could channel chakra through his Kusanagi but using elemental, that was something he couldn't do yet. As he read the book, memorizing the words, silently saying them outside, he was unaware of a person calling for him. Naruto! Naruto! Hey stupid! Shouted a female voice. He snapped out of it and looked up, seeing a red-haired girl. It's about time, come on, Orochimaru-sama is back and he wants to see you. Said Tayuya to him, who closed his book and put it up and went with her to go see his father. The two entered a room and in it sat Orochimaru, a smirk on his face. Sensei, I'm glad you're back. Said Naruto with about a him. Orochimaru let out a chuckle. How many times do I have to tell you, Naruto? Whenever we're not training you should call me father. He said amusingly to him. Sorry Otusan, it's just I was hoping you would give me some training before the finals since they start in just 3 days. HMPH, very well, meet me in the training grounds in 1 hour and we shall resume your training. Said Orochimaru to him. Naruto smiled and did a small bow. Hi! He shouted as he left the room. Tayuya went to join him as well but was suddenly called back by her lord. Tayuya, stay here, there's something I want to discuss with you. He ordered her, who turned around towards the Otokage. What is it that you want, sir? She asked, showing respect and control that she rarely showed anyone. Orochimaru stood up and looked her in her brown eyes. Tayuya, the finals are a few days away, aren't they? I hope you're ready for it. Tayuya looked at him confused. Of course I am, Orochimaru-sama, I'm going to kick that sand girl's ass. Orochimaru smirked. Your part in the exams is a very important one, for you shall be one of the keys to the destruction of Konoha. Tayuya looked at him confused. Destruction? Excuse me sir, but what the hell are you talking about? During the exams we are going to attack Konoha. I went to Oto and have gathered the others, the rest of the Sound 4 are here, and during the battle you 4 will trap the Sandame whilst I deal with him. While I am doing that, my troops and our allies with Suna will kill every person in this miserable place. He said coldly to her. Tayuya looked up at him as he had a cruel look in his eyes which scared her. Why are we attacking this place? Does Naruto know? No, Naruto does not know what we are going to do. And why? For the crimes they have done, what they did to Naruto and what I was forced to watch as they did it. He said angrily. Tayuya took a step back cautiously. I'm doing this for revenge for all they did to him. For all the beatings, all the mistreatment, every damn thing they did to him, they would be paid back tenfold for it. They beat him? Asked Tayuya. That is correct. 4 times I saw how a mob formed and attacked him, hurling rocks and rotten food at him, beating him nearly to the brink of unconsciousness until these damn Anbu thought it was enough. 1 time they would have killed him had I not intervened. He said, remembering Naruto's 8th birthday. These bigots will pay with their lives for all they have done. Everything my son has been forced to endure will not go unpunished. Tayuya looked at him and her features hardened, a scowl of determination on her face. If this invasion is for Naruto, then you have my full undivided support, Orochimaru-sama, I won't fail you. Orochimaru smiled slightly. Good, now go and get ready Tayuya, I'll need you for the invasion. Tayuya bowed and left him. Haku, his ear pressed against one of the walls of the building and using chakra to increase his hearing, shook his head and frowned, having heard it all. What are you doing, Orochimaru? He said to himself. You're risking everything for the sake of vengeance, maybe even the love of your own flesh and blood. Elsewhere in a small town in Fire Country. Poor things, said a figure standing in the middle of the chaos watching the madness. People were running around screaming in fear and horror, trying to escape. Confused and confounded by this unexpected attack, they suffer and bring suffering to one another. He stood in the center of the town as the citizens ran for their lives, the town being attacked by renegade ninjas and bandits, killing and looting the people of the town. The figure, having his hair in a long ponytail, looked around, not being bothered, not even flinching when an arrow whizzed by his head. He had added new clothing, a dark purple shirt covering his chest with blue gauntlets covering both of his arms. His pants were now brown and a large red sleeveless coat. The townsmen tried to defend themselves, but they were no match for the blitzkrieg-like force of the attackers. The weak are preyed upon by the strong, he said as he saw the leader of the renegade ninja, a large ugly-looking man, let out a laugh as he killed a villager. Yet the strong are so pathetic they can only live as parasites, suckling on the fat of the weak. He heard a scream and saw a woman carrying a crying baby being chased by 3 men as she ran into a dead end. It's all so cruel, so ugly. No. Please don't, pleaded the woman, clutching the crying baby to her chest as the 3 renegades licked their chops. Poor things. Suddenly there was a flash and 2 of the renegades fell down, long cuts down their backs. The third one turned around only to watch as his throat was slit as blood came from the fatal wound. The renegades, seeing 3 of their own cut down in an instant, turned their attention to the figure, who wasn't intimidated by them. The figure brought his nodashi up and a small smile played on his face as he was surrounded by the renegades, being rallied by their leader, who demanded them to remove his head. I'll put each and every one of you out of your misery. The battle was swift and to him disappointing. No one could give him a decent challenge. Even impaling 2 men on the same blade did little to excite him as he dodged their attacks and countered their jutsus with some of his own. The villagers, seeing a ray of hope, rallied and fought back, determined to protect their home. The renegades were soon fleeing, and their leader, who was too busy barking orders demanding that they continued fighting, did not notice that he had been stabbed through his large gut by the man's blade until it was too late. The figure was soon surrounded by the villagers, who fell down and bowed to him, thanking him for saving their lives and their town, as he was their hero sent from the gods. He looked around, an annoyed expression on his face as he sheathed his sword and turned and exited the town. Ignoring the cries of thanks and that he'll always be welcomed here, and denying their offered gold and the pleas of the woman who wanted to thank him personally, he left the town. He soon came to a crossroad and saw a sign that pointed towards Konoha, which was some distance away, his destination ever since he was done training. It would take 2 days to get there walking. He went right, which would take him there 3 days. In 3 days you shall feed like you never have before, Satsugaisha, said Mutadoji to his sword as he made his way. Back in Konoha, Hinata Hyuga was working on her techniques in the Hyuga manner. She was by herself in an abandoned room as she trained, working on jabs and blows. She went through a slow style of fighting, pretending she was fighting against an imaginary opponent. Odd place for you to be training, daughter, said a voice, and she turned around and lowered her head, bowing to her father Hiyashi, who walked into the room. If you are going to train, you should at least train in the dojo and get some proper teaching, he said in a scolding tone to her, a frown on his face. Hinata bit her lip and responded, "IIW was just doing some on my own father." Hiyashi shook his head. "I don't see why. You have nothing to train for, you're not in the finals. There is nothing wrong with trying to be better yourself," she said to him. He looked thoughtfully at that. "True, but it helps if you have some skill, which you do not." That felt like a dagger had been stabbed into her chest at her father's bitter words, and Hinata hung her head shamefully. "What I would give for you to possess a quarter of your cousin's prowess," he said, lamenting the fact that Neji wasn't of the upper Hyugas. Hinata raised her head and looked at her strict father. "Why you wish that Neji-san was why your son, don't you, father?" she said to him, surprising him. "You wish that our positions were reversed, that I was your niece, and Neji was why your son, don't you?" Hiyashi looked at her. Yes I do, child. At times I wish Neji was my son so the Hyuga clan would have a strong heir. He said, admitting it. Hinata's eyes brimmed with tears, but she refused to let them fall down. Well, father, I'm not Neji, but I shall do my best so that one day I will be good enough and make you proud. She walked past him and exited the room, leaving him by himself. That night, Orochimaru sighed exhausted. He had finally gotten done training Naruto and he was worn out. The boy had wanted him to train him to his fullest and they had worked for hours on end on skills and jutsus. He forgotten that Naruto had enough energy to fill an entire mountain and the boy didn't give up. He had also gotten stronger as well during his period of time that he was gone. The sun was down by the time they got done. Right now all he wanted to do was relax. A loud knock was on his door and he glared at it in frustration. This had better be good. He growled, demanding that the impudent came in. The door opened and in stepped with 2 bundles over his shoulder Kabuto Yakushi. Orochimaru propped himself up, a look of interest in his eyes. Your sacrifices that you requested, my lord, said Kabuto, smiling, dropping the bundles to the floor. Orochimaru nodded and recognized the 2 bodies as Yoroi and Masumi, his former teammates. They demanded that they be part in your plan and so I gave them a vital part in it. He explained nonchalantly. Orochimaru chuckled and nodded, pleased with the results. Along with Mizuki, those 3 were the 3 they needed for his plan in the Edo Tensei. Oh, Orochimaru-sama, the Kage is here, said Kabuto to him. I thought you might be interested in seeing him before everything is put into place for the invasion. Orochimaru thought about it. He did need a disguise, so perhaps a meeting between the 2 leaders needed to happen. Good job, Kabuto, you are dismissed. Make sure my men are ready. Hi, said Kabuto, bowing before he left in a blur of smoke. Elsewhere 2 figures were talking to one another. What is Kage planning? He has sealed his room off from the rest of us and is doing something, said Yuho Shohei, the taijutsu specialist, to the shinobi across from him as the 2 looked at the sealed door. I do not know, he is up to something, that much is certain, mused Hanzo, his arms folded across his chest. Damn religious freak, spat Yuho. Why does the Akatsuki organization have to put up with his and Hidan's freakish ways? He muttered. The 2 were discussing their partner and leader of the remaining group, Kage Sosano, who had sealed himself in his room and hadn't been heard from in 3 days when he ordered them not to interrupt him whilst he did something. He had sealed his door with a poison jutsu which if anyone touched they would immediately be stricken with poison. At times they could hear loud screams of something that wasn't human coming from the room. Whatever he was doing, Kage had refused to let them know about it, as the Jashin follower was working on something. The sound of thunder boomed as a storm was starting to begin as the 2 agents continued talking. Our mission should have been finished by now, the boy we should have captured by now. Do not fret, Yuho, you have your chance to face him again soon, also remember what the snake is planning, said Hanzo. Yuho nodded. The snake, Orochimaru was here and he was planning an attack on Konoha, and during the time they would ambush the Fox Boy and during the mass terror and confusion bring Naruto back to Omegakure, the base of Akatsuki. Shinjiro and Tsushigumo are dead, and Muda, no one knows what has happened to him, he disappeared shortly after the preliminaries. Hanzo nodded as well. Muda is brash, he may have challenged the Fox Boy, and he may have been killed in that battle, perhaps that is why we have not seen him. HMPH, well, a pity then that he died instead of K. Before Yuho could finish, a loud boom of thunder echoed throughout the room, but it wasn't from the storm, it came from Kage's room. The 2 looked at one another, confused over what just happened. Suddenly the cracks under the door light up with a bright light spewing forth into the room. The 2 agents shielded their eyes from the stinging light and they watched as it turned a multitude of colors. They suddenly heard a loud banshee-like wail which echoed throughout the room, bursting their eardrums. Naruto, who was busy hanging out with the other sound nins, suddenly felt an extremely dark presence. Naruto, what's the matter? Asked Kintsuchi to him. He stood up and went over to a window and could sense it, perhaps due to the Kyuubi he could feel the pull of dark wicked power. Naruto looked out the window and although he couldn't see where it was coming from, he could tell it was close. He wasn't the only one who sensed it. Gaara stood on top of a building sensing it, he could feel it as well, something very interesting had just happened. Back at the building, Hanzo and Yuho clutched their ears at the unforgiving wail coming from Kage's room. Suddenly, as quickly as it began, it suddenly stopped. The two looked around confused, unsure what had just happened. Before either of them could say a word, a burst of energy erupted from the room, knocking them off their feet. The two slowly pulled themselves back up and looked up and saw that the door was opening. And out stepped Kage, but there was something very different about him. He didn't appear to look any different, but they could sense it. There was something terrifying about him now. A much greater power came from him. "What in Kami's name have you done?" ordered Yuho to him, who smirked. "Let's just say Jashin has rewarded me for my servitude," he said as he then left them, leaving them confused over what had just happened. Naruto, staring out the window, could not help but feel that something bad had just happened. 2 days later, it was the eve of the exams and everyone was doing everything they can to get some last-minute training. Orochimaru had brought the rest of the Sound Four with him and they had helped out Naruto some as well. Sasuke was training with the Sharingan and working on the Chidori to perfect it. Everyone involved in the exams was pushing themselves to their limits, trying to get an advantage over their opponents. A figure in Konoha sat on top of the carved Hokage mountains and overlooked the village, his thoughts racing through his mind. If that kid is Orochimaru's son, then how did he change his features? And why is he wearing a sound headband? Muttered Jiraiya to himself. The boy had been on his mind most of the time. Although he had seen him briefly, he remembered him having blonde hair which was now black and his skin was now pale. The boy could have been transferred to that new village, so that's a possibility. Sarutobi could have done that, transfer him to another village to protect him, but why would he do it with an unknown village like Oto? This is a puzzler, mused the lecher. Ever since he saw the boy, he stood out in his thoughts. He couldn't even concentrate on writing Ika as he was so focused on solving it. If that boy was Orochimaru's son and he had regained his original features, then where was Orochimaru? He had remembered Orochimaru's threat, and only by chance did he come across Konoha when the exams were being held a few weeks ago. His thoughts filled with the image of him holding back his once best friend and the cries of a newborn baby. Jiraiya could not help but feel an ominous presence that something bad was going to happen tomorrow. Elsewhere, Naruto was with Haku, but the feminine boy hadn't talked very much. Naruto had noticed this and felt that something was up. "Hey Haku, what's wrong?" he asked the ice boy, who turned his head. "It's nothing, Naruto." Naruto frowned. He knew when someone was hiding something from him. "Something's up, Haku, what's the matter?" Haku looked at him. "Naruto, you love your father Orochimaru-sama, don't you?" "Of course I do, Otosan is my father and I'll do anything for him." Haku sighed. "Orochimaru is going to do something tomorrow which might change your opinion on him." Naruto looked at him confused. "What are you talking about, Haku?" Haku looked at him and wondered if he should tell him what Orochimaru was going to do, what he had overheard. This could be heartbreaking for Naruto. "Naruto, Orochimaru is going to." Suddenly they heard an argument and the two boys saw Kidomaru, the spider ninja, being yelled at by a group of citizens. "Leave the Hokage's grandson alone, you six-armed freak," shouted one of them at him, who scowled angrily. Kidomaru had a prank pulled on him by the kid and he was prepared to teach him some manners when the civilians showed up. "Go back to your web, we don't like monsters like yourself ruining our village," snarled another at him, who clenched his fists. Naruto looked at the scene, disgusted at what he saw, and frankly he wasn't surprised at their pigheadedness and bias-like nature towards someone who was different than them. Kidomaru was prepared to do more than just exchange words with them when Sakin and Jirobo appeared and lead the anger boy away. The three walked past Naruto and Haku. "Goddamn son of a bitch, can you believe those jackasses? Calling me a freakin' monster," snarled Kidomaru, punching a wall. "Calm down, man, they'll get theirs tomorrow at the exams," said Sakin, trying to calm down the spider ninja. "Just because I was born like this I'm a monster. God, I hate this place," muttered Kidomaru in anger, looking down at his body that he secretly wished he hadn't been born with at times. "We all wish we was normal, Kidomaru, but we all can't be," said Jirobo as the group walked past them. Naruto shook his head. "Why am I not surprised? It amazed me how different Oto and this place is. For a place that prides itself on being fair and equal, they sure as hell don't show it. I wish these people will someday get what's coming to them," he muttered. Haku remained quiet, not saying a word. "Hey Haku, what was it you wanted to tell me?" "It's nothing, forget I said anything," responded Haku, who then left, leaving him confused. That night Orochimaru was at a secret meeting with the Kage. Everything is in place, tomorrow Konoha shall fall, said the ruler of sand eagerly rubbing his hands. Correct, but we must take caution that everything goes according to plan, warned Orochimaru, rolling his eyes at the fool's anticipation. The Kage was out of his robes wearing civilian clothes. HMPH, if the boy dares screw this up he'll regret it, scowled the Kage, fingering the bell he wore around his neck. Speaking of Gaara, where is he? I'd like to meet him before we begin the invasion tomorrow. The Kage snorted. Very well, the boy is here. He mentioned towards a door and it slid open and revealed Gaara, who walked in. Boy, this is the Otokage of sound, show him some respect, he ordered him. Gaara ignored his glares and stared at Orochimaru as green meet gold. Orochimaru for a brief moment thought he saw his own son, of what he could have become if he hadn't taken him away. Emotionless, unfeeling, and uncaring. That was Gaara. Remember boy, do not try anything funny tomorrow, or you'll regret it, snapped the Kage, bringing up the accursed bell he wore that Gaara hated. I'm certain he will succeed and perform his job admirably, Kage, perhaps some faith in your son would do you some good, said Orochimaru dryly. The ruler of sand scoffed, as if he thought him a fool. HMPH, we have wasted enough time, let's go boy. The Kage stood up and prepared to leave the room. Orochimaru smirked as he left. Oh, I almost forgot, there is one other thing I want to discuss. The Kage turned around and the next thing he knew he had been slashed across the throat by Orochimaru, severing his vocal cords. He grasped his throat and attempted to scream, but only a gargled cry came out. The bell that he wore had also been cut off and fell to the floor and shattered, breaking into pieces. The Kage looked at Orochimaru, horror on his face. Orochimaru looked at him and then past him and smirked. If you want to kill him, now is your chance. Before the Kage could react, he was suddenly covered in sand, unable to move his body. He turned his head and his eyes widened in horror as he looked at his son. Gaara, his face emotionless, clenched his hand into a fist and killed him, crushing him with his sand. One less maggot in the world, mused Orochimaru, glaring down at the dead body. He noticed Gaara looking at him. You desire a purpose in your life, do you not? I cannot give you one, but tomorrow perhaps you shall find one, said Orochimaru to him. Gaara stared at him. Why did you just do that? I would have killed him myself if I had been given the chance, but why did you do that? Orochimaru didn't answer as he reached over and took the Kage's robes and hat. A good disguise for tomorrow, wouldn't you say? Naruto and you are very different and at the same time the same, Gaara, and the last thing I want is for him to become like you. Perhaps you shall change soon. With that he left him in the room, a rare confused look on his face. As dawn was approaching, a figure walked into a building, his blade sheathed. He suddenly felt a weapon pressed against his throat. That would be an unwise move, Hanzo, he said to his attacker. He removed his scythe. So you're still alive, and you have gotten new threads, said a man wearing a helmet walking forward. In the flesh, Yuho, and my old outfit was getting in the way, so I went with something new, he said, smiling. Muda, so you have come back after all, said Kage Sosano to him. That is correct. Muda stared at Kage and could feel the power coming from him. And it seems I'm not the only one who has gotten stronger in 1 month's time. Kage let out a laugh. So it would seem, you have a new weapon, do you not? Muda held up his Nodashi in its sheath. A gift from Konan, a perfect weapon for fighting demons, he said as the sun raised up behind him. Today Naruto, I prove once and for all that I am superior to you and everyone else. As the sun raised over the village of Konoha, those who were participating in the finals were already awake. Kintsuchi was cleaning her bells, making last-minute preparations with her needles. Shino Aburame was listening to the buzzing sound of the insects inside him. Shikamaru Nara was wondering how he got himself into this troublesome mess. Tamari was waving her fan, prepared to show everyone what a kunoichi is supposed to be like. Haku was meditating near a lake, preparing himself mentally. Neji Hyuga was working on his juken. Kankuro made last-second adjustments to his puppet. Muda, Yuho, and Kage went over the plan that they would do. Sasuke Uchiha thoughts of coming one step closer to his goal. Gaara stood motionless like a statue already at the arena. And for the last two, Tayuya and Naruto Uzumaki, they stood on top of the hotel they were staying at, a look of determination on their faces. You ready, Naruto? Asked Tayuya to him. Naruto turned to face her and nodded. Let's do this. Chapter 33. Not all is determined by fate. The anticipation was reaching a fevering point for the village of Konoha as the citizens headed to the arena to watch and see who of the next generation of ninjas would be bestowed upon the title of Chunin. The streets were filled with people talking amongst themselves, some placing bets on who would win, others speaking of who had the best chance to win. What had started out as 28 1 month ago had been cut down to 14. 4 leaves, 3 sand, 3 rain, and 4 sound nins. That was the total of those that were left. People were chatting amongst themselves as they made their way to the arena. The local favorite was either Sasuke Uchiha or Neji Hyuga, as both boys were from the 2 strongest clans in Konoha. They were the highly favored to become Chunin. Although you couldn't count out people like Gaara of Sand who had soundly defeated Rock Lee in the preliminaries. There was much talk over who was the favorite to win. Gaara stood at the arena. He had been there ever since morning, standing like a statue, not even moving a muscle. Ever since the death of the former Kage, his father that he himself had killed with the assistance of the ruler of sound, he had been in that spot waiting for what was going to happen. Today he would figure out his purpose in life, no matter what he had to do. Gaara sensed a dark presence nearby and he turned his head and saw someone appear. A swirl of purple flames swarmed around the arena and then came together, revealing the figure who walked out of the flames. He had his hood covered in a hood, and the outfit he wore featured symbols that were arcane. He also had on his right hand, on his 4th finger, was a ring that had a symbol of a religion, a dark religion of an evil deity that he served. Gaara, looking at the hooded figure, sensed something about him. The hooded figure turned his head to the sand boy and stared directly at the vessel of Shukaku. His soulless gray eyes met his green orbs as the two stared at one another. I have no time to waste with you, vessel of Shukaku. Another vessel calls forth my interest. But our group shall have an interest in you at some point, said the figure to him. Gaara scowled at him and resisted the urges of Shukaku as he glared at him. There was something very interesting about this foe, so that was the source of power was coming from that he had sensed a few nights ago. He could sense it coming from the ninja of rain. What was it that he had done that had gave him such a dark aura? No matter, if he stands in my way, I'll spill his blood along with anyone else who gets in my way, he said quietly to himself as the two were the only ones in the arena. Elsewhere, Naruto Uzumaki was getting himself ready. He had his kusanagi in its sheath strapped to his waist and making sure to go over every strategy that he had thought of for the fights ahead. He strapped on his headband across his forehead and checked his appearance. This was it. Everything ever since becoming a sound nin and even before he entered the Leaf Academy was for this. He was going to prove that he wasn't a dead last loser that everyone believed him to be. And he had decided that today was the day that he revealed to everyone who Raida Asakura really was. He exited the room and seeing that everyone else had left as well, he soon caught up with the others, Haku, Tayuya, and Kin. About time you showed up. Come on, it's about time for the exams to begin, snapped Tayuya at him. Of course she wasn't really mad, it was just her personality. Sorry guys, I got caught up at the last moment. Let's go, he said, apologizing to them. The four made their way to where the finals would be held and entered the arena. A few of the others were there already. Shino Aburame, who had defeated Dosu, Shikamaru, who seemed as if he would rather be somewhere else. Tamari, who Tayuya glared at the two rival kunoichis, the prodigy of the Hyuga clan Neji, who was by himself. Kankuro with his puppet wrapped up on his back, and two other figures as well. Gaara and a hooded figure who Naruto instantly felt a dark power coming from. Looks like everyone's about here, no sign of Sasuke though, said Kin, looking around, mentioning the lone Uchiha. Bah, he probably wussed out and left. I always thought those with some stupid bloodline to be overrated as hell anyway, muttered Tayuya. In the stands a couple of the onlookers were from the preliminaries. Where is Sasuke-kun? He should be here by now, whined Ino Yamanaka, a bit disappointed he hadn't arrived. This should be a good battle, 14 ninjas showing their youthful spirits, exclaimed Rock Lee, who sat next to Tenten and had gotten doctor's permission to see the fights of the exams. His crutches were next to him, but although he was critically injured he didn't act like it. Hinata Hyuga was sitting with her father and her sister Hanabi along with other Hyuga clan members. She looked on as she saw Neji standing by himself, but her eyes widened and a small smile crossed her face as she saw Haku enter the arena. Just watch Hinata. Neji-san will show everyone how superior he and the Hyuga clan is to everyone, starting with that girly boy," said Hanabi. Hinata frowned at her sister. Although she was younger than her, she was a brat and was arrogant and was clearly their father's favorite. "Enough, Hanabi, don't start either of you," ordered Hiyashi to them both. Hinata nodded and her sister had an arrogant smirk on her face. Sakura, who was sitting in the stands, looked on and noticed the boy known as Raida. She frowned slightly as she watched him. She knew that he was not who he said he was. Also watching in the stands was Anko Mitarashi, whose eyes narrowed when she saw him. This was it, today was the day. "Hey forehead girl." Sakura, who was watching, turned her head to Ino. "Where's Sasuke? You should know where he's. He can't miss this. Sheesh, could you kiss up to that Uchiha brat anymore?" said a voice, and the genins turned and saw two sound nins sitting across from them. One was leaning back, arms above his head in a carefree manner, the other sitting wearing a large fur item. "There's more people in this besides that punk," said Zaku Abumi, rolling his eyes in annoyance. Kiba Inuzuka, who was with them, frowned. "Hey, I don't see you down there unlike everyone else." "I don't see you either, if I recall you got knocked out in one blow," replied Dosu Kinuta, bringing up his fight in the preliminaries. "Why you?" Kiba growled along with his dog Akamaru as Zaku gave the Bondong Nin a high five. "Just watch, Kin and the others are going to kick everyone else's ass and become Chunin," said Zaku confidently. "Yeah right, I bet Shikamaru will beat that broad without any trouble," said Ino, glaring down at Kin, the girl who had defeated and mocked her. Sakura ignored the putdowns and insults being tossed by the Sound and Leaf genins as she continued watching on. It was almost time, and as Naruto looked on, he wondered where a certain rival of his was. He hadn't seen or heard him ever since their battle on the bridge when he ran off. Had he decided not to show? "I've been waiting a long time for this, Raida Asakura," said a voice which dashed his thoughts. He recognized that voice anywhere, and it was one he hated. Slowly he turned around and his eyes narrowed at the figure. The figure had black hair in a long ponytail, wearing a red sleeveless coat, a purple shirt, brown pants, and blue gauntlets. "Muda," he said between clenched teeth, looking at his adversary. Although he was wearing a new outfit, he could recognize him instantly. After the confrontations they had had, there was no way he wouldn't recognize him. Muda Daidoji smirked. "It's been quite some time since we've last met, hasn't it, Naruto?" he said, alternating between the names to irritate him. "I guess it has. I see you have some new clothes. Did you ruin your old ones?" "No, I just decided to go with a new look," he said, smirking, but was quickly replaced with a serious look. "Have you forgotten the promise that I made? After I defeat my opponent and you defeat Yuho, we fight and I kill you." Naruto snarled and reached towards his sword. Likewise Muda did the same, reaching towards his Nodashi, but both stopped short of pulling them out. "I don't know whatever your problem is with me, Muda, but before the exams are over I'm going to kill you," he vowed, his blue eyes showing signs of going red. Muda slid his blade back into its sheath and smiled. "Good, that's the Naruto I want to fight. Now excuse me, I have to prepare for my opponent." With that he left, leaving a frowning Naruto by himself. A short time later it was about to begin. Sarutobi the Sandame stroked his chin as he looked on at the 13 participants. Sasuke had yet to appear, and if he didn't show up when his fight with Gaara began he would be disqualified. Standing up he looked out to them in the audience, and they turned their attention to him as he prepared to give a speech, which was customary of him to do so. "I will keep this short. All of you are worthy of earning the title of Chunin. Fight with honor and dignity, applaud the skills of the victor and honor the valor of the loser. Fight hard with all your skill and strength and be prepared for anything your opponent shall send at you. Fight for your village and your country, but most of all fight and give us something to cheer for," he said, smiling as the audience erupted, eager to watch the battles. Chuckling he sat back down and noticed someone walking near him. He wore similar robes like he did and had his face covered. When he neared him he bowed respectfully. "Ah, Kage, I am glad you came," he said to the ruler of Sand, who took a seat next to him. "A bit far off from Suna, aren't you?" he said good-naturedly. The Kage chuckled and responded lightheartedly. "I wouldn't miss this for anything in the world, Hokage-sama." Golden eyes stared behind the outfit at the old man. "No, I wouldn't miss this for the world, old man," he said in his thoughts as the two looked down as the fights were about to begin. "Neji Hyuga of the Leaf. Haku of the Sound. Come forward," ordered Genma, who had replaced Hayate. The two ninjas stepped forward and glared at one another. You two shall fight first, also due to that we don't have enough competitors, the winner of this fight shall receive a bye and automatically advance to the third round. He said to them and then turned to the rest. The rest of you hand to the stands and wait for your fight. The remaining 11 genins did so, leaving the Hyuga prodigy and the mist ninja. The two stared at one another and slowly each got into his fighting stance. Haku reached towards some Senbon, drawing them out as he slipped his mask on. In the stands, Hinata was quiet as she watched her cousin prepare to fight the boy she had a small crush on. Do you think Haku can beat that dipwad? Asked Yuya standing next to Naruto. Maybe, depends if he doesn't get striked by his chakra sealing attacks. Said Naruto to her. Back at the battleground, the two slowly circled one another. Give up, it is your fate to lose to me. Accept it as you can't defeat fate. Said Neji to him. Haku scoffed. I don't think so, maybe once I would have listened to your words, but I think I've tuned you out of my head. Begin, ordered Genma. The two immediately began the battle. Haku hurled some Senbon at him which Neji dodged and charged him, aiming for his chakra points. Haku narrowly avoided the strike using his quickness and did a backflip out of the way and landed on a branch of a tree. Leaping up, he did a somersault, and whilst he was doing so hurled Senbon down upon him. Neji covered himself and avoided being striked seriously by the needles. Haku landed and did hand symbols, Kori Suipaku no Jutsu. Ice Spike no Jutsu. He tossed it at Neji, who activated his Kaden and deflected the attack, shattering it. Neji, done spinning, attacked him and Haku attempted to block it but got struck in the wrist, feeling burning pain shot throughout his arm. Neji smirked. I just some sealed of your chakra points, unfortunately I wasn't able to do full damage. Haku gritted through his teeth. Lesson learned. He muttered. He knew the Hyugas prided themselves on sealing chakra points, but he didn't. Their Juken was that strong, he wouldn't do that again. Neji activated his Byakugan and charged him, prepared to seal off more of his chakra points. He struck Haku in the chest and thought he had done critical damage, but was surprised to see that the boy had somehow turned to solid ice statue of himself. What? Impossible! He shouted. Suddenly he noticed his arms starting to become colder and his eyes widened when he looked down and saw that he had been covered entirely in ice, shocking him. He was then struck from behind and he turned around and was met with a fist to his face, the surprising force of the blow knocking him down and shocking everyone that he had been taken off of his feet. He looked up and saw Haku standing in front of him. Turning his head, he noticed that the statue he had struck had melted into water. Although you had managed to seal some of my chakra, I'm still able to use some jutsus. That is a trap jutsu which if an enemy strikes it, the body part he attacked it with shall temporarily be covered with ice. Good thing you didn't try a headbutt. Neji scowled and looked down at his frozen arm. No matter, I'll defeat you with one arm if I have to prove to you that you can't change fate. He shouted as he charged Haku. The feminine boy avoided the one-handed jabs and strikes, leaping backwards. What is it with you and this obsession with fate? Do you honestly believe that we all our actions are guided by fate? Said Haku, frowning at him. Neji scoffed. You really are a fool. Yes, I at one time was a naive fool thinking I had control over my actions. The Hyuga prodigy clenched his hand into a fist, remembering what happened to his father. But something happened that made me realize that we cannot resist the pull of fate. Our of all actions are guided by fate and only a fool would try to resist fate's pull. My life, my lowly place in the Hyuga clan, despite my skill and prowess, my father's passing, it has all been due to the actions of fate. And I have came to accept it, and you too shall accept it as well. He shouted, activating his Byakugan again and glaring at him. Haku looked at him, a small look of disgust on his face. So that's it. You're basically telling me you're a quitter. He said bitterly. Neji looked at him in anger at his words. You are a coward. You're afraid to make your own choices in life, so instead you run and hide behind some foolish philosophy which you think will protect you instead of facing it. He said, a disgusted look on his face. I once believed my fate as well was to serve my former master. Zabuza Momochi, the swordsman of the mist. At that, many people in the stands watching on, eyes widened, having earned of the infamous swordsman. Haku glared at Neji as he stared at him, feeling the presence of his former master. I was once his tool and weapon, content with my lot as his bodyguard. But then not long ago he died and I wasn't able to protect him. And so I was left with two choices: one, I could walk around aimlessly like a lost dog until my time ended, or I could find my own path in life. I'm here so I guess I'm finding my own path, unlike you who would rather hide instead of as making your own path. The two boys glared at one another as they prepared to continue their fight. Neji in determination smashed his frozen arm against a tree, shattering the ice, freeing it. Haku drew more Senbon as they were ready to continue. Hiyashi watched on, having listened to both boys, the death of his twin brother, who was also Neji's father, who had sacrificed his life when both Neji and Hinata were young, over his to protect his brother, who despite the fact he hated the clan, his love for his sibling was greater. The death of his father had nearly been traumatizing to the young prodigy, who had become bitter and had started talking about fate, thinking one couldn't change it. The boy's words of finding your own path had seemed to make him mad. He looked over at his daughters. Hanabi was cheering for Neji, wanting him to be victorious, whilst Hinata was quiet and looking on. He could sense that she secretly wanted the other boy to win. Turning his attention back to the fight, he watched on with the rest of the cheering crowd, waiting to see which of the two would win. Kurikagure no Jutsu, shouted Haku as he said, hand symbols covering the entire arena in mist and fading into it to hide. Neji scoffed, not impressed. Fool, do you really think your mist can hide you from my Byakugan? He snarled, activating his bloodline. He looked around, scanning the entire area, and as he did so he saw a figure perched onto a tree. I have you now, he whispered, easily finding him. Haku, who was preparing an ambush jutsu, was suddenly, to his surprise, was attacked from behind. He turned around and he saw the violet eyes of Neji with veins sticking out. He cursed and tried to get back up on the branch and fight him, but Neji was on the offensive, striking him with blows, not of the juken, more of punches than jabs and palm strikes. He couldn't seal his chakra points like that, but Neji didn't seem to care. The two fought on the branch covered by mist. The crowd watching on was a bit annoyed, unable to see the fight due to the mist. Hey, that's not fair, show us the fight. This is a travesty, demanded Rock Lee, having to be held down by Ten due to him getting all excited and attempting to stand up, forgetting that he's crippled. Yeah, who's winning? Snapped Ino, annoyed. If you bozos listened with your ears instead of with your mouth, you might be able to hear what's going on, said Zaku. The Leaf Genins turned and saw Zaku, Abumi and Dosu Kinuta concentrating, the two boys seemingly able to know what was going on in the fight. Sakura looked at him and got an idea. You sound nins, you have super hearing, right? Can you tell us what's going on? Zaku glanced at her, annoyed. What should we do that after? We'll do it, replied Dosu. Zaku looked at him, but a stern look from the mummy nin told him it was pointless to argue. We'll keep you up to date with what's going on since you asked nicely, he said as he resumed concentrating, sending chakra to his ears. Naruto, Tayuya, and Kin were also listening in as well. Sounds close, muttered Naruto. Sounds like both of the assholes are engaging in fisticuffs, grumbled Tayuya. I can't tell who's winning, can either of you? Asked Kin. The two shook their heads and the three resumed listening in. Haku and Neji engaged in battle on the tree, avoided thrown blows by the others. Haku ducked under a kick and went to deliver a chop across Neji's chest. Neji avoided and attempted to sweep the legs out from underneath Haku. On the narrow branch they were on, Haku did a backflip, avoiding the low attack, and landed back on his feet. He then struck the momentary vulnerable boy across the face with a strong punch, but Neji countered with a roundhouse kick that had enough force to knock Haku off of the tree and onto the ground. Haku winced from the forceful impact and saw Neji in the thinly lit mist leap down. Getting to 1 foot, he threw a punch at Neji, who smirked and held out his arm, thinking to stop the weak blow. But to his surprise he drew back his arm in pain at contact and saw small dots of blood. He looked at Haku and saw that the boy had Senbon in his fist and that the punch was meant to hide the true purpose of the attack. Enough of this, Kaden, shouted Neji, starting to spin as Haku was too close. The boy tried to move but was sent off his feet and crashed into a tree back first. Outside in the stands, Naruto winced, feeling that one. Back in, Haku struggled to get to his feet and saw Neji standing across from him, a smug smirk on his face as the advantage was his. Didn't I tell you? You are fated to lose here. You were a good opponent, but you shall be another fool who I defeated who didn't listen. Haku scowled and reached towards his pocket. Neji thought he was reaching towards a weapon but figured it wouldn't do any good. To his surprise, Haku pulled out neither a Senbon or a kunai. Instead he pulled out ball, a small blue ball. This confused him for a moment, but he wasn't nervous as he watched on in annoyance as Haku began to bounce the ball up and down as if he was playing a game. What are you doing? We're supposed to fight. This isn't the time for games. He snapped, annoyed. After a couple of seconds has passed and Haku continued bouncing that stupid ball. Haku looked at him. I'm bouncing a ball, surely I must have been fated to do that in the exams. Neji looked at him confused at his words as Haku resumed bouncing his ball. What's wrong? You said this is my fate. Am I not fated to bounce a ball in our fight? Neji gritted his teeth. I don't have time for stupid nonsense. He said, not believing this. Was he mocking him? Haku caught the ball and looked at him. Tell me I had a bowl of rice and some eggs this morning. Was I fated to eat that this day? Personally I prefer eggs and ham, but you're the expert at what people do. He said as he resumed bouncing the ball. Neji glared at him. What are you doing? I don't have time for this foolishness. He said, getting angry. Hey, you're the one that's the fate expert, not me, so tell me. Has everything that's gone on in your life has been decided by fate? Your hair, your pompous attitude, how you developed your skills, your father's passing. Enough, shouted Neji, charging him. He had heard enough. He charged Haku, who tossed the ball upwards and then leapt over the charging boy and in doing so caught the ball as it came down. Neji turned to glare at him, a look of fury on his face whilst Haku had a calm look on his. See, you were fated to charge me like a blind bull just then, weren't you? He said as he resumed bouncing the ball. Neji went to charge him but stopped. Was that true? Was that planned all along? Growling, he charged him again, intent on striking him, but again Haku avoided, and this time rather easily. He turned around at the boy who was frustrating him. Losing your temper. I guess you was fated to do that as well. Not good qualities of a ninja, especially a prodigy. But I guess that is your fate. Enough. I said enough, shouted Neji, activating his Byakugan as he prepared to strike, only for Haku to move aside and to add insult to injury, kick him from behind. Pretty sad kinda, you losing this match due to you not controlling your temper, but I guess that is your fate, he said as he was using Neji's belief against him. Neji's jaw was trembling in rage. How dare he claim that his fate was to be beaten by him? And to rub it in his face, Haku bounced that damned ball again. I don't know what happened in your past that made you this way, but it certainly wasn't the act of fate, that's for certain. Whatever happened to your father, he chose to die on his own behalf. He made that choice, not fate. Perhaps his son should accept that and move on. Piece by piece Haku was breaking down Neji's defensives. Neji yelled in fury. You know nothing about me or my father. He charged Haku with all of his speed and delivered two powerful strikes to his chest at full strength, which the boy didn't even try to defend. He smirked as he made contact with each blow, thinking he had won, but he saw to his surprise the boy turn into a statue of ice. He gasped in horror and shock as he looked down and saw both of his arms were frozen solid, covered in ice, unable to break free. He heard something and he turned his head and saw the real Haku appear. His mask was off and he had placed the ball back in his pocket. I lost? Asked Neji in disbelief as the truth dawned upon him as he could not defend himself. Haku nodded. It happens even to the best of us. W was everything. W was everything. I believed in nothing but a lie. That's up for you to decide, but for now try to find your own path and move on. You'll be a better ninja and a better person for doing so, said Haku to him. Neji looked at him and closed his eyes and slowly nodded his head. The next thing he knew was a sharp blow to his neck as he fell to the ground unconscious. Outside, those who were in the stands were growing restless. What was happening? Who had won? Hiyashi had told one of his bodyguards to see what had happened, and shortly after he did, he had a look of shock on his face as if he didn't believe what he had seen. This confused Hiyashi over the normally stoic guard's reaction. Surely Neji had won. Hey, what's happening in there? Said Kiba to Zaku as he and Dosu had stopped focusing. Hey, let's just say that's it. Sound nins 1 leaf nins 0. Proclaimed Zaku, a cocky smile on his face. The mist around the arena slowly faded away and revealed two figures. One was standing up and the other was on the ground. And to their nearly everyone's surprise, it was the one that none of them had thought would have lost. Genma walked forward and checked on the fallen figure. He was alive, just knocked out. Seeing that he couldn't compete, he made the announcement. The winner of the round is Haku of the Sound, he announced as the victor bowed in gratitude at the stunned audience, most not believing what had happened. Slowly cheer and applause erupted from the crowd over Haku's victory. Haku watched as Neji was placed on a stretcher to be treated. He walked forward and undid the jutsu, freeing his frozen arms. He then leaned down and whispered into his ear. Remember, do not hide behind fate as an excuse, from now on find your own path. He told the boy who despite his state of unconsciousness knew that he heard him. He stood up and watched as he was taken away. A look of disbelief was on most of the Hyuga clan members, shocked that Neji, the prodigy of the clan, had lost. Hanabi was speechless, unable to utter a single word due to her shock. Hiyashi didn't say anything either, but noticed his other daughter had a happy look on her face. Odd for you to cheer against your cousin Hinata, he said to her, causing her to turn to him and blush. He smirked however at her. Very well, just don't make it a daily thing. Hinata nodded at her father and turned to look back at Haku. Hiyashi folded his arms and looked up at the sky, at the heavens, as he thought of his brother. Haku, looking around, had a small blush on his face at the cheering and applause he was receiving. This was certainly something he wasn't prepared for. He looked around and saw a certain heiress, and he smiled as he looked at her, causing Hinata to smile as well as he headed back up to the stands. Right now he felt pretty good, a victory, and an automatic bye into the third round. For now everything was alright. Chapter 34, a battle worthy of true kunoichi. At the arena, the finals for the Chunin exams continued as the second match was done for, and most of those in attendance that were male had winced in sympathy for what had just happened between Shikamaru Nara and Kintsuchi. The match had started out pretty well between the lazy shadow boy and the bell-using girl. Shikamaru at first thought he could hide in the trees and think of a strategy to easily defeat her, but to his surprise he found the trees had been filled with bells attached to Senbon, set up by Kin before the exams began, giving her an great advantage over him as she had come prepared for her fight and then activated her genjutsu, causing his head to ache and to see multiple copies of her as well due to the ringing of her bells, which was what had defeated his teammate in the preliminaries. It appeared that Kin was going to win easily, but Shikamaru proved that despite the fact he was lazy, he had a brilliant mind and was able to think of strategies even under the threat of going into a coma to get him out of his predicament, freeing himself by her bell ringing by using explosive tags to blow up the trees that had her bells. Shikamaru, if he wasn't so lazy, much to the annoyance of his sensei and mother, was told that he could be a great general if he lived long enough, perhaps even rivaling the legendary Zhuge Liang in terms of planning and strategy, as he had much potential. Now free of her jutsu and no longer having his head feeling like it was being pounded on like a drum, Shikamaru was able to turn the fight into his style, having Kin make mistakes and missed opportunities that enabled him to activate his Kage main and trap her in his shadow, preventing her from moving or doing anything else. Grudgingly upset that he had foiled her plans and unable to move as long as the jutsu lasted, she surrendered the fight to him, giving Shikamaru the win. Unfortunately for Shikamaru, however, he opened his mouth without thinking after he let her go, saying she was almost as bad as Ino, an annoying troublesome bitch. Kin with her advanced hearing heard what he said, and the next thing Shikamaru knew, Kin had placed her foot right in between his groin. Needless to say, he went down in a crumpled heap in a lot of pain. Genma, the proctor for the finals, went to check on him as Kin stormed off, glad she got her revenge on him, as most would agree he deserved that. Oh man, that dude ain't going to have any kids after that. Winced Zaku Abumi in the stands as he from past experience knew how hard Kin kicked. You got that right, agreed Kiba Inuzuka, sweat dropping, the two agreeing on something for the first time as Shikamaru was placed on a stretcher and taken out, looking more like the loser of the match than the winner. It was announced they would take a 15-minute break before the next fight, which would be between Tayuya and Tamari. Naruto Uzumaki, still going under the name of Raida Asakura, was in the bathroom washing his hands, thinking of his upcoming match against Yuho Shohei, the taijutsu specialist of the Rain Nins. He remembered the sting of the scorpion that he had been stabbed with before saving Anko from the blow. And who knew what else he had up in store for him, as like the rest of them they were mysterious. His thoughts also drifted back to his first fight, the one with Shinjiro. The Pyro Nin had told him that the Rain Ninjas wanted him, but for what? He couldn't get any answers out of him, as he had set himself ablaze rather than tell him. His thoughts then drifted towards a certain nemesis of his Mutadedoji, the one being who seemed obsessed with defeating him. He could tell during their brief confrontation that he had gotten stronger and much more dangerous. Well, first he has to get past his opponent to get to me, he thought to himself as they would face each other in the next round should both of them win. Heading back towards where the others would be at, he waited for the next fight to begin. Haku was heading towards the hospital, going to the room where a person he had faced was being treated for his wounds. He entered the room and saw Neji Hyuga on the bed. The Hyuga prodigy noticed him and sat up, and the two were in a stare-off, a small glare on Neji's face as he stared at the boy from Mist. "Have you made your choice?" he asked the Hyuga with little emotion. "Are you still going to act as if everything is governed and decided by fate? Or are you going to follow your own path and forge your own name by yourself?" Neji stared hard at him and sat up, wincing a bit as his shoulders had been numb, a side effect from being frozen by Haku's ice jutsu, as they had little feeling in them and would take time so he could use them again. Haku stared back at him as the two adversaries looked at one another. After a couple of tense minutes between the two, Haku suddenly smiled a bit and nodded. "I see, I guess you will change your ways after all." Neji looked at him confused, not understanding, as the boy left. As Haku exited, he nearly bumped into the head of the Hyuga clan, Hiashi. Bowing in politeness to him, he headed back to the arena as Hiashi watched him go and then entered his nephew's room. Back at the arena, the 15-minute break was almost over and it was about time for the third match. Naruto, back at the arena, was waiting for it to begin when he suddenly felt someone press herself against him. He turned his head and was face to face with Temari, daughter of the Kage. A seductive smile on her face had bumped into him. "Hey there, cutie, how about after this we go somewhere private and chat a little?" She purred, attraction in her eyes. Red stained Naruto's cheeks as the blonde smiled at him and he gulped a little. I'm afraid that I'll have to." Temari laughed. "Why are you so shy around me? Afraid I have cooties or something?" she said teasingly as she rested her hands on his shoulders. "You're strong in battle, yet you're as timid as a mouse outside of it. I like men who surprise me." Yuya, watching from afar, resisted the urge to go up there and kill her right this instant for daring to make advances on Naruto. "After I mop the floor with your teammate, we can get to know one another better. I promise you won't regret it," she said as she left. As she walked away, she turned her head and winked at him, swaying her hips suggestively towards Naruto, whose face was crimson. "I'm going to kill her," growled the red-haired girl, a look of fury on her face at what the skank had just done, making advances on Naruto right in front of her just to spite her for their upcoming match. Naruto tried to remove the blush from his face when he saw his teammate past him. "Hey Yuya, how? Piss off," she shouted, startling him, a bit surprised at her reaction as he watched her go. The next match of the finals shall begin between Temari of the Sand and Yuya of the Sound, announced Genma to the eager crowd as the two female kunoichis made their way down the steps to the arena. "Hey!" Naruto heard a voice and saw the girl's brother Kankuro approach him. "Looks like my sister's has the hots for you, dude," he said as he stood next to him and looked on. "Hate to be you, since whenever she sets her sights on someone she doesn't give up very easily." Naruto looked down. Sure, he admitted that Temari was attractive and easy on the eyes. He wasn't too fond of girls who acted like that to get a guy's attention. Plus, something told him she was just attracted to him in a lustful way instead of for who he was on the inside. Her other sibling was standing by himself, appearing to be bored and irritated with what was going on. Looking down, he watched as the two got ready to face one another. The two rulers of Konoha and Suna watched on. "This should be interesting for your daughter Kage," said Sarutobi to him. The ruler of Sand nodded slightly as he watched on. "Let's get this over with. I've beaten one, wanna be easily beating another should be even easier," said Temari, bringing out her fan. Yuya scowled and brought up her flute, a determined glare in her eyes. "Listen closely, whore, because this melody is going to be the last one you hear." Genma barely had enough time to order them to begin when they were already at it. Temari sent out a gust of wind that Yuya avoided, leaping away. Yuya then, playing a tune, summoned her Duki. Wielding their giant clubs, the three giant ape-like creatures formed in front of her, serving as a shield from her adversaries' attacks. They seemed to be unaffected by the wind as they stood there impassively. Temari glared at the creatures, her wind having little effect on them so far. "I have to end this quick. I'm supposed to participate in the invasion that's supposed to happen when that snake guy gives the signal. So I can't waste energy and chakra with this bitch." She looked at her red-haired adversary, who glared back at her. "Still, I suppose I can have some fun with her." "Hey Red," she said with a grin, knowing how to make her do something stupid. "What's wrong, afraid to fight me yourself?" she said tauntingly. Yuya glared at her but sensed she was trying something and remained quiet. "Is it through your dense skull that you can't beat me?" Yuya's jaw started to tremble a bit as she was pushing her buttons. "I mean seriously, you don't fight, you have your bandaged Neanderthals do all the work for you. I bet you couldn't win in a real fight against a 5-year-old. Yuya growled as she was starting to tick her off. No wonder the guy you like wants nothing to do. That's it. Next thing she knew, the redhead was right in front of her with shocking speed, a murderous look in her eyes as she tackled her in the stomach, knocking the wind out of her and to the ground, the furious redhead on top of her, pounding her on the head. It was on. Rawr. Catfight, said Kankuro with a grin as he and Naruto watched on. And a catfight it was, with the two rolling on the ground trying to get on top of the other, clawing and biting one another, each attempting to pound the hell out of one another. No jutsu or ninja trickery here, it was an all-out war between the two. Shouldn't the proctor do something about this? Asked Naruto. Genma, who had done nothing to separate the two, had heard the boy and looked at him as if he was crazy. Many males who had tried to stop a fight between two rival females left with nothing but claw marks and broken ribs. The crowd was cheering wildly. Well, mostly the perverted male half of the crowd was at what was going on. There was nothing in the rules about this happening in a fight. Yuya felt the stinging blow of Temari's slap, which knocked her hat off. Angrily she yanked hard on Temari's hair, causing her to scream in pain. The two were going at it like crazy, each attempting to beat the hell out of the other. Yuya hit her upside the head with her forearm and Temari bit her on the hand. Yuya yelled in pain and fury and slammed her head against hers, dislodging her teeth. They slapped, pulled hair, kicked, clawed, and did everything in their power to beat the other. Yuya, with a strong kick to Temari's stomach, knocked her off of her and stood up. Getting her hat, she put it back on and pulled out her flute. Temari had recovered her fan and was glaring at her. Bitch, shouted Yuya at her. Whore, responded Temari. Skank, slut, Jezebel. The would-be Kage was shaking his head in annoyance as he watched the fight. I thought I told that girl to not let her anger get the best of her and to end this match quickly. Yuya threw some kunai at her, which she easily deflected with her fan. She followed it up with shuriken, which again was deflected. Huh? What are you trying to do? Did you forget about my earlier fight? Projectile attacks are useless against me. Taunted Temari at her. Yuya resummoned her Duki and instructed them to destroy a tree for lumber. Well, let's see you deflect this. Temari's eyes widened as the creatures then hurled the pieces of tree at her, forcing her to move. She let out a curse. She could deflect things with her fan, sure, but not that big. She avoided the falling trees that they threw at her skillfully as she decided to end this, and her fan opened up, revealing all three moons. Eat this, whore. Daikamachi no Jutsu. She then sent a powerful burst of wind combined with her chakra right at the Duki. The powerful attack sliced through them, cutting two of them in half at their power. Yuya went to move out of the way and managed to avoid the full force of the attack, but was still hit and was knocked into a tree, hitting her back hard. Naruto looked on in the stands, concern on his face as the odds had quickly shifted in the blonde girl's favor. Still alive, eh? Said Temari as she saw Yuya attempt to get up. All I need is one more attack to end this once and for all. She then saw the girl unexpectedly smirk at her. Hey, what's with that stupid smirk? I've beaten you, she said as she walked forward, a frown on her face. Yuya grinned wickedly all of a sudden. You really are like most blondes, stupid as hell. Before Temari could finish her off, she was grasped from below and looked down and saw a clawed hand ensnaring her. This is how she defeated that pink-haired girl. I've walked right into her trap. She then felt herself being crushed by the claw, unable to break free as she struggled, and the powerful force of the attack forcing her to drop her fan. Yuya ran towards it and snatched it up, and the claw dropped the sand girl. Temari tried to reach for her fan helplessly as Yuya held it above her head. Not so tough without your fan, eh? Well, say goodbye to it. She threw her weapon into the stands, which narrowly missed Dosu Kinuta as it stuck itself into the stands. Yuya brought her flute up to her lips and grinned. Hey, wait a second. Shouted Temari as without her weapon she was powerless and unable to defend herself. Yuya just grinned mercilessly at her and casted a genjutsu. Mateki, Muganosa, she shouted and then played a melody on her flute. Temari suddenly felt as if something was pulling her arms. She looked and saw nothing but an invisible force was grabbing her like wires. She looked at her arms and her eyes widened in shock and horror as her flesh was melting off her skin. She felt the burning sensation throughout her body, and despite how hard she struggled, she could not break free as she was forced to watch her skin as she was trapped in the girl's genjutsu with no way out. I surrender, she shouted helplessly. After a couple minutes had passed and she was then dropped to the ground, and she looked around and saw to her relief her skin was still there. The winner of the match via forfeit is Genma was about to announce the winner when Tayuya had walked up to the defeated sand girl and forced her up by the throat. She then dragged her to a tree and slammed her back against it and glared at her face to face. She pulled out a kunai and drew back her arm. Tamari looked at her, a rare look of fear on her face, as Tayuya had the advantage and if she wanted to could kill her. Tayuya glared hard at her and all she had to do was plunge it into her skull and kill her. Tayuya thrusted the knife forward and Tamari closed her eyes, bracing for the impact. To her surprise, she heard it slam into something else. She opened her eyes and saw that Tayuya had plunged it into the bark of the tree just barely an inch away from her ear. Tayuya then whispered into her ear so only she could hear. "You're lucky you were the Kage's daughter and needed for the invasion. If you wasn't, I would kill you this instant. If you ever try anything like that to him again," she said, referring to Naruto, "I will not show you the mercy I've given you this time," she said in a hiss and dropped her. Tamari glared at her, trying to salvage her pride, but she knew from experience with Gaara that Tayuya's words weren't a threat, it was a promise. Tayuya was announced the winner by Genma, who waved nonchalantly at the cheering crowd and headed back up to where the rest of the participants were at. Sarutobi looked over at his guest. "Kage, you don't seem to care that your daughter was almost killed." The Kage remained silent. Temari's arrogance and refusing to take this seriously was the cause of her loss. Hopefully from now on she'll not underestimate her enemies, especially those from sound. Sarutobi looked at him and turned his attention back to the arena. The man under the robes and mask grinned. "Yes, old man, it's wise to not underestimate the ninjas of sound, cause you'll soon find out why." Tayuya was met by Naruto as she headed back up, who smiled at her. "Good job, Tayuya, looks like half of us are moving on." Yeah, she said and then clutched her ribs, which were injured. "Damn, lousy bitch," she muttered. She had to admit if her last Duki had been destroyed, she would have been defeated by Tamari. "You should get that looked at. Make sure nothing's injured." "Yes, father," she said dryly as she walked away, clutching her ribs. "Hey Tayuya," she turned her head back to him. "I was thinking, after the exams and whichever of us becomes Chunin, if it's all right with you," he then spoke the next words carefully. "Would you like to go out on a date?" Tayuya looked at him, surprised at his daring words, but slowly a smile, a rare true smile, appeared on her face. "I'll take a rain check on that, we can discuss it once we get back to Oto," she said as she went to get her ribs checked. Naruto smiled as he watched her go. Elsewhere, Kage Sosano, who was not present with the rest of the participants, was speaking with the shadow of Aim Hanzo. "Do you understand what you are supposed to do?" he said to him, holding out a medium-sized metal barrel that was covered with a cloth over its lid. Something, a type of liquid, was apparently inside it. "You want me to take this to one of the buildings and light it?" Kage nodded. "Be warned, once you light it you'll only have 10 seconds to evacuate the building before it ignites." He then smirked. "Surely you can make it out in less than 7 seconds with your speed." "When do you want me to do it?" asked Hanzo, taking the object. "I shall give you the signal after my match to light it. Orochimaru is planning his invasion to commence during the exams, and I've decided to give his troops a little jumpstart. They will think the time to attack is now, thus causing confusion amongst their ranks. The leaf fools won't understand what is going on but will surely attempt to protect their home. And during that confusion we capture the fox boy." Kage nodded. "Yes, now go, find a target, any place will do, and wait for my signal." "What is inside this?" asked the ninja to him, who grinned. "A substance blessed by Jashin priests, you'll understand shortly. My lord will see to it that it'll do its job. Just do yours as well." Hanzo bowed and disappeared with the metal barrel. "Lord Jashin, the chaos that will spread today shall be unmatched by any throughout history," said Kage as he headed back to the arena. Chapter 35, Yuji vs. Naruto. "So what's the analysis, doc? Will I ever play the violin again?" asked the redhead to the medic Nin as she lowered her shirt covering her stomach. Well, except for a couple bruises on your ribcage you should be fine and won't be hindered when the invasion begins, Tayuya," responded Kabuto Yakushi to her. Finished with her. The flute player nodded as she had went to see Orochimaru's head medic. "Speaking of you know what, when does it begin?" asked Sakin, the leader of the Sound Four, who along with Kidomaru and Jiroba was there as well. They were in a small building being used as headquarters before the invasion began. "Hell if I know, Orochimaru will tell us when to start wiping out this garbage town," muttered Tayuya, ignoring Jiroba's annoyed look at her words. He should be soon, though it would be better and easier if Kimimaro had come with us," said the spider ninja Kitamaru, referring to the last Kage who along with Arashi was ruling in Orochimaru's place in sound. "All you four have to do is activate the trap jutsu that will seal the Hokage and prevent him from getting out while Orochimaru deals with him inside there. The sound forces and our sand allies will blitzkrieg Konoha's defenses before they know what is going on and are able to defend them," said Kabuto to them, reminding them of their duty. "Plus if Suna's secret weapon works like he should, we won't have any problem overthrowing the leaf. Hard to believe we're doing all this just so Orochimaru can have revenge for what happened to his kid," responded Sakin. "I know he probably had a bad life, but didn't all of us have miserable lives as well?" Tayuya scowled at him. "Shut up, asshole. This damn village of bigots treated him like a scapegoat cause of what the Yondaime did to him on the day of his birth, remember? Yeah, we've had lousy lives, but at least we had families at one time. Naruto never had anyone until Orochimaru brought him to sound a couple months ago. Easy Tayuya, since we did you become Naruto's girlfriend?" said Kitamaru to her. An angry blush covered the girl's face, but they were stopped by Kabuto having enough of the argument. "That's enough, all of you. It doesn't matter how bad our lives or Naruto's life has been," he said, lecturing them. "If you want to think of something, think of this: out there when the invasion begins, every hit you deliver, every jutsu you activate, every life that you take, do it for all the suffering you went through back when you were weak and helpless. Think back to those moments and gain the power and strength from the memories as we destroy Konoha and any who stand in our path," he said as he left them making preparations. Tayuya left the group as well, heading back to the arena to see Naruto's fight. At the arena, the crowd cheered the two combatants on. Muda Daidoji of Omegakure vs Kankuro of Sunagakure. In the stands where the rest of the participants in the finals watched on stood Naruto Uzumaki, standing next to Haku as the two boys watched on the fight. Muda had sent away his Nodashi and had instead summoned a Naginata, claiming he didn't want to waste his newest weapon on an unworthy foe. Kankuro, using his puppet strings, controlled Karasu, his puppet, which he had filled with weapons laced with poison for this fight. Muda twirled his Naginata in a beautiful maneuver, effectively parrying the attacks of Kankuro's scarecrow-like puppet. Kankuro had hidden in the arena, knowing he had little chance against the Ninja of Rain in close-range battle, using his puppet with its weapons laced with poison to do the fighting for him as he plotted to lure him into a trap. Muda dodged a poison dart shot out of Karasu and parried a scythe-like weapon it also carried as well. He was just as good with the Naginata as he was with a sword. Naruto, watching in the stands, wondered what other weapon styles he would use as well. Karasu fired another poison dart, which Muda waited for it and then deflected it up into the air, and when it came down, caught it with great dexterity and tossed it right back at the puppet. "You cannot hide forever. Come and face me," shouted out Muda, issuing a challenge to Kankuro, who remained hidden. Hiding in the bushes, Kankuro was preparing to use his plan to ensnare the man. "Very well, if you do not wish to fight but instead act like a turtle, I will make you come out of your shell." Bringing his weapon up, he began twirling the fine-crafted weapon around his head, gaining speed with each spin. Soon the weapon was started to become little more than a blur. He then brought to his side, spinning it with one arm and then his other hand to activate a jutsu. He then tossed the spinning blade around it, making a loud shrilling sound. The blade sliced through a bush with ease and then went up into the air, cutting through a branch of a tree as it was acting like a buzzsaw, slicing through anything in its path. Muda brought his arm up and reached out towards it and grinned as the blade came downwards, and then controlling it with his chakra made the buzzsaw go in whatever direction he wanted it to go. Naruto watched on, never seeing a technique like this before. "I heard that some ninjas were able to control their weapons and make it move just with their chakra, but the move is supposedly an A-class ranked jutsu that only elites can do. No way should a genin be able to do that move, as it requires great discipline and control," said Haku to him as he watched on, as well as the spinning blade of death destroyed a tree. Naruto gritted his teeth and watched on. Muda, controlling the weapon with little trouble just by using his chakra and waving his hand in whatever way he wanted to, decided that playtime was over and sent the weapon in a circular motion and revealed Kankuro's hiding spot. "Now we end this," he said, a wicked grin on his face as he caught his weapon, which reverted back into a spear, and charged Kankuro. Charging the sandboy, he leapt up and he thrusted his spear forward, preparing to skewer Kankuro. "Ah, Karasu!" shouted Kankuro, and just before he was impaled he managed to get his puppet in front of him and the metal spear plunged into the hard wood of Karasu. Kankuro looked down and saw to his shock that the head of the weapon was sticking out of the back of Karasu and was far too close in his view near him. Thinking the danger was over and that Muta couldn't hit him now that his spear was skewered in his puppet, now was his chance to end this as a smile was on his face. "Hey, now that your fancy stick is stuck you can't stab me with it but I can stab you," he said cockily, preparing to use one of his still functioning puppet's weapons. "Oh," responded Muta, not swayed in the least, which surprised Kankuro a bit. Muta then brought 2 fingers to the side of his throat and taking a bit of breath spewed out what appeared to be a blue mist-like substance which struck him right in the face. "Ah, what the hell is this stuff?" shouted Kankuro as he tried to remove it from his face and his eyes. Suddenly, all of a sudden he felt tired and drowsy as well. He tried to keep himself awake but his eyes became real heavy and he was all worn out. He collapsed to the ground on his back, releasing his hold on his puppet. Genma went up to the boy and pressed his head against the boy's chest. His heart was beating regularly and he to his surprise heard what sounded like snoring. He looked up and saw that Kankuro was asleep but unable to continue the fight. Whatever Muta had done to him had made him fall asleep. Due to Kankuro's inability to continue the fight, the winner is Muta Daidoji, he said, announcing Muta as the victor as he pulled out his spear and ignored the crowd's reaction. Naruto up in the stands shook his head as he added 2 more things to the list of things that Muta would use against him as he made his way back up. "Something tells me that he and the rest of those guys from Rain are not genins," he said, causing Haku to look at him. "Every one of those guys we have faced has been much stronger than most genins are and we've been lucky to beat them so far. Remember your fight against Tsushigumo. He would have had you if it hadn't been for his jutsu running out. And Shinjiro nearly killed me too with his fire attacks, including some that were way above genin class techniques." Haku nodded, feeling that he was right. "I agree, all of them were at least Chunin level or above with their abilities and power, and I think at least one of them is a Jonin in disguise. The question is which one?" Naruto's eyes narrowed in determination. "They've also been attacking me as well and claiming that the ruler of Rain wants me for something. I think it has something to do with the Kyuubi. You fear they are trying to capture you for Kyuubi's power. I don't know, but I'm going to find out when I face Yuho." Muta, making his way back up the stands, meet up with Keiji Sosano and Yuho Shohei, the other members of the group who were in the exams. "So, has the time come for us to make our move?" he said as he sent away his spear and resummoned his Nodashi. "No, not yet, but soon, very soon," Yuho said, the Jashin follower, to the taijutsu user who turned to him. "Do not fail me like Shinjiro and Tsushigumo have." Yuho glared hard at the leader of the group and then leapt down as the announcement for his match was made. Landing in the center of the arena, he looked over and saw his opponent make his way down. "The next battle shall be between Raita Asakura and Yuho Shohei," announced Genma to the crowd. Up in the stands, Anko looked on as the boy who posed as Raita's match was about to begin. This was the fight she had wanted to see. Her eyes narrowed as he made his way down. "All right, let's see what you can do, Naruto," she said quietly to herself. Seated in the stands was Sakura Haruno, who also saw him make his way down. This was it was time to figure out if the boy down there was the boy who was once her former comrade and friend. "Come on, Raita, kick that loser's ass," shouted Zaku Abumi, cheering him on, remembering being poisoned by Yuho. He, Dosu, and Kin, who had joined them, were in the stands sitting next to the Leaf Genin still. "After this it'll be 3-1. HMPH, we'll see about that. I bet he loses and Sasuke-kun sweeps his way to becoming Chunin," replied Ino Yamanaka. "I highly doubt your precious Sasuke can hold a candle to Raita or his opponent," sneered Kin in disgust to the blonde. "Well, Shikamaru was enough to beat you," responded Choji Akamichi, eating a bag of barbecue chips. "I would highly be against saying your pineapple-haired friend won that battle," said Dosu Kinuta dryly, remembering what happened. Afterwards, as they looked on, the two opponents stared hard at one another. Naruto versus Yuho, as they locked eyes with one another. "I haven't forgotten what you tried to do to me, your ambush on me and my friends, and that you poisoned me," said Naruto to him, remembering the sting of the scorpion that he had felt. Yuho sneered in response. The boy was a fool, an idiotic fool who had no idea of what he was getting himself into. From what he had seen and done in the past years, no one could comprehend what he had did. Before he meet Conan. Flashback. Wild cheering erupted from the crowd as two figures in a round pit fought one another. Getting the upper hand, one smashed his opponent's head into the solid wall repeatedly, and when he let him go, his opponent was not getting up ever again. Wiping the blood of his opponents off of his face, a younger Yuho Shohei smeared the blood over his chest, wearing it like a badge of honor, and let out a victory cry which the bloodthirsty crowd soaked up. There was one rule in the pit which every fighter learned very quickly. You fight or you die. The pit was an underground illegal fighting group held in different parts of the world, but due to the fact that much money was involved, those in the pit could easily cause others to look away. Fights would take place, pitting man against man, beast against beast, with bets with who would win and who would die. Many businessmen who secured their profits by less than fair ways, such as Gato, had fighters in the pit who would battle one another to the end. Slaves would also be tossed into the pit as well. There was no ninja trickery here, no means of escape, you either fight or you died. After their first fight, and they should live, the only way a fighter could leave the pit was that he secured enough wins and money to buy his freedom, unlikely as his master would take most of the profits, or he died on the cold, unforgiving hard stone and the cries of the rabid onlookers. Yuho Shohei had reigned as undefeated champion for 5 years. Sold into slavery as a young boy, he had been bought by a wealthy merchant from Stone who thought he would do well as fodder, but Yuho had surprised his master, defeating his trainers in less than 3 months. In 6 months he had his first fight in the dreaded pit with the wild and screaming crowd. Despite being at the age of 11, he won his first battle by rupturing his opponent's lung. Yuho quickly became a favorite at the pit, winning fight after fight, bringing his master much wealth and his most prized fighter. He closed his mind to the cheering of the crowd, instead focusing on the impact of his blows against skin. He defeated every other fighter that was put in his way, even defeating a rare white tiger by choking it to death with a chain. He killed the previous champion by smashing his skull with his own helmet, which Yuho took and wore as his own. Learning multiple styles of taijutsu, he made his entire body his weapon, caring not for swords or knives or any type of steel that other fighters would wield, as his fists and legs were his weapons of choice. 112 victories and counting under his belt ever since he started when he was 11 in 5 years at the pit. His master was well pleased with him, as he had made him a powerful and wealthy man, which he mostly kept to himself, and he had often boasted in his drunken ramblings that Yuho could kill a dragon with his bare hands. His words soon found the ear of an organization looking for agents. After defeating another would-be challenger, Yuho saw his master talking with a blue-haired woman wearing a unique cloak that had clouds on it. A woman in the pit was rare, as she wasn't a slave or a harem girl that most fighters or businessmen would surround themselves with. Thinking nothing of it, he soon found out something. He had been sold. For $2 million his master had sold him to the woman who had destroyed his chains and the contract that binded him to the place, and ordered him to come with her into the lair of Akatsuki. There he was made an agent and then given 5 scrolls that contained 5 powerful but dangerous styles of fighting, long believed to have been lost forever by 5 of the greatest taijutsu masters on the planet, and they were now his to learn, as Conan would see to it that he would crush all who would stand in his way. Flashback ends. And now he had been brought here to defeat and capture the boy in front of him who contained the fox vessel. As he got into a stance of fighting, his opponent did so as well, and they only had to wait for the proctor for them to fight. Genma, looking at the two and seeing that they were ready, brought his hands up. "Begin," he shouted. The two immediately went at it, starting off with Yuho on the offensive, attacking Naruto. Fighting like a tiger, which was one of his preferred styles, he remained on the attack, forcing Naruto to adapt and defend against the blows which were like a tiger jabbing with its claws. Naruto had studied the style of fighting during his time in Konoha and knew that although it was fierce, the tiger had a flaw. Waiting for the right moment, he saw Yujo's right hand nearing him like a tiger would to snap its prey's neck. He waited for the last split second and casted the Kawarami Jutsu, making the only thing Yuho hit was wood. Naruto then appeared and attacked him, striking him with multiple blows. The tiger could not defend or evade strikes, so Yuho had taken the force of Naruto's attacks, knocking him down onto the ground. Leaping back up, Yuho hissed. A tiger's weakness is that it cannot be used defensively as well as offensively, good when you have the advantage, but when pressed into a corner you are unable to defend yourself. Said Naruto to him. Tiger is just one of many styles I have, and I use it to warm up. Now let's see you handle this. Snapped Yuho, who suddenly made hand symbols, and Naruto braced himself for whatever he was planning. Itsu Gekidoku Dokueki, Mukade Shiki. Like before, Yujo's body started to transform. His eyes become more bulged-like and his body resembled an insect. Small claws emerged on his hands and his body became covered with small hairs on it as he had transformed himself into a mixture of human and centipede. "Damn it, that's the move he used to beat me," said Zaku, watching in the stands, remembering how he was poisoned by him. Yuho charged and with blinding speed sent multiple punches and kicks at Naruto. So fast, thought Naruto as he could not keep up with the man's blinding speed. He was punching one area one moment and then somewhere else the next. He was too fast for the human eye to possibly track and follow. Yuho attacked and hit him in the chest and then delivered a kick to his side, knocking him to the ground. Naruto winced and pulled himself up. Fortunately for him, Kyuubi decided to make himself useful and prevent the poison from harming the sound ninja. Yuho was on him again and Naruto rolled out of the way as Yuho like a centipede struck fast and hard. Naruto used his hands and managed to get up and back flip out of the way. He went to reach towards his kusanagi but stopped. "I don't think my sword can keep up with that speed, and if I miss just once he could hit me 100 times. He then knew what he had to do. Time for the trump card. Pulling out a weapon scroll, he sent his sword away and summoned a different weapon. In both of his hands was two items wrapped together by a chain. A kama on one hand and attached to the other side of the chain was a metal ball at the end. Instead of kusanagi he now wielded a kusarigama. The Kage in the stands looked on a bit interested. He did not know that the boy had a weapon like that. He must have gotten it in secret during the 1-month training period. Naruto twirled the metal ball part of the chain in the air, spinning it around, showing that he was no novice with it. Yuho, looking on, wasn't impressed. "You think a new weapon will do you any good?" Naruto grinned and stopped twirling. "Let's find out." Naruto rushed towards him, swinging the bladed end of the weapon over his head, and he then tossed it, sending the kama at him. Yuho avoided and it hit the dirt, but Naruto pulled it right out with ease. Yuho scoffed, not intimidated, and charged him. Naruto then threw the ball, aiming for the legs. Ensnaring the left leg, he then pulled hard and tripped him up, sending him on his back with his leg tied up by the ball and chain. Naruto rushed forward and sliced at him with the bladed part of the weapon, and Yuho narrowly avoided being stabbed. Freeing his leg, he got up, but Naruto was right on him, using a mixture of high and low attacks to keep him off balance. For fighting a centipede you must attack it both high and low, knocking it off balance, unable to use its deadly striking speed. Yuho threw a punch at him and Naruto responded by tossing the ball part of the weapon, and it trapped his arm, entangling it. Yuho tried to pull his arm free as a tug of war came between the two, which was just what Naruto wanted him to do. He then dashed him with the bladed end and stabbed him right in the helpless arm. Not done it, he continued pulling the blade up right into the shoulder area, dealing critical damage to that arm. Yuho cried out in pain and clutched his arm, feeling his blood coming forth from the wound as he went back to his human form. A long cut appeared, evidence of the wound that had been affected on him. "Yeah, kick his ass, Naruto," shouted to Yuya, standing with Haku cheering him on as she had returned to watch his fight. A smile was on her face as she watched on, wanting him to win. Muda Daidoji, watching on, nodded in approval. A ninja who learned one weapon was a deadly foe. A ninja who learned and mastered multiple weapons was an even deadlier foe. Yuho, clutching his arm, glared at him and bringing his injured arm up, did hand symbols again. Aitsu Gekidoku Dokueki, Tokage Shiki. His body transformed again, this time back into his lizard form. He leapt up into the tree, but Naruto was prepared, knowing how to deal with this. Futon. Daitapa. He fired a powerful burst of wind at the tree, destroying it and knocking him out of it. "You're crazy if you think I'm gonna let you go up there again. No trees means no sticking to them," he said to him, who sneered. "So, you think you know my weaknesses, do you?" he said as he went back to his human form. "Well, let's see how you handle this." He again made hand symbols. Itsu Gekidoku Dokueki, Sho Shiki. 5 deadly venoms. Toad style. His body again changed, but this time differently. His stomach became bloated and fatter, increasing in size. His skin turned a yellowish-brown color and dark reddish-brown spots covered him as well. 4 long claw-like blades appeared on each arm, and his body mass increased as he was much heavier now. He then opened his mouth and spewed out a type of liquid, covering himself, causing cries of disgust to come from the crowd. Naruto looked on at this new form but wasn't too concerned. "A toad, is that supposed to intimidate me? Big deal, you got fatter, so what?" he said cockily. Yuho laughed a gurgling laugh. "Try your luck," he said in a heavy tone of voice. See if your weapon can penetrate my skin. I'll give you a free shot right here, he shouted, smacking his large belly. Naruto, seeing his chance, charged towards him and half expected to skewer him with his blade. But to his surprise the blade was deflected off it with no damage whatsoever done to him. Naruto looked a bit shocked and do it again, stabbing him once more but to no effect. Switching to his ball, he slammed the metal ball against it, but it had little effect as well. Try as hard as he could, his attacks didn't seem to do any damage whatsoever to the large toad, as if his weapons were bouncing right off him. His arms growing tired, Naruto could not figure out a way to hurt him when he was punched hard and the claws did damage to his face, drawing blood. Yuho then picked him up and with great strength tossed him overhead with ease, causing him to land hard on the ground. Naruto picked himself up and resummoned his sword and prepared for his jutsu as the blade glowed purple with chakra. Mikazuki Tasuki Kaier. Doing a slash, he sent an attack shaped like a crescent moon right at him, who stood still. The attack hit him right in the chest, but aside from forcing him to take a half step back, it had little effect. Ha! Pathetic fool. Your attacks are meaningless against me. Toads cover themselves with poison to protect themselves from predators. I cover myself with it to defend myself against attacks such as your kusarigama and sword, which cannot penetrate through my hide. Your attacks and justice are powerless against my might now, as I cannot be harmed. Naruto looked at his sword and dual kama and metal ball and back at the now toad-like Yuho. Weapons wouldn't pierce through him and attacking him with the ball would only tire himself out. Jutsus wouldn't work either, as one of his best moves did no damage whatsoever to the now gluttonous toad-like ninja. How can he get out of this one? He could only ask himself as Yuho laughed at him.